Okay, we're live. Going to hold off for just a minute before we get started, but this is Charlie Ziese with Stargate Pyramids, and with me today is Lisa Richards. I hope all of you
Guys.
had a good 4th of July weekend. I was able to leave where I live in Harrisburg and go to see my family and my significant other's family in Pittsburgh. So we just got back yesterday and we had a great time. So, but that experience is actually the motivator for the first 5 minutes of our show this morning. The background, as you can see, I changed the background today. This is a Caduceus coil, and this is a big day because Lisa and I are going to talk about how to build a Caduceus coil. So, Lisa, if you want to say a few words before we get started, that'd be great.
If you suffer from carpal tunnel, do not make a Caduceus coil. It's a lot of hand work, a lot of hand strength to do these buggers.
That's right. And we, I just finished a draft of the instructions, sent them off to Lisa Thursday. So she did some yeoman's work to get one done over the weekend, but at least I now have someone. It's really easy to do when you know what you're doing, but I at least have had someone test these instructions now that we're going to be going over today. And Lisa has a couple of comments, but I think basically, what we'll show you today is doable, but it is a little more challenging actually probably than making a pyramid is, at least just in terms of dexterity and strength and so forth. But anyway, we welcome all today. Before we start showing the instructions, I do want to open up and I had an experience over the weekend, which I hope you all will appreciate. I went to Pittsburgh to see my family, and we had an interesting experience with each of our family groups, and we met with 4 different ones, 2 from my side and 2 from hers, in terms of their responses and reactions to COVID and so forth. And what it really showed me was that so much of this is a function of the information that we have available to us to make our informed decisions. And so all I really want to do with this today is to show you that, of course, mainstream media is going to give you a totally different perspective than the internet. But even when you go to the internet, it's going to be a function of the search engines that you have in terms of the information that you find on a particular question. So, with that said, I just want to start with this because I found this quotation from the Buddha, and I think it's true about COVID, it's true about pyramids, it's true about everything in our life. So I just wanted to read it kind of to give us a starting point. Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it. So, I think that's just a good starting point. It really encapsulates what we're trying to do here. And I think you'll see what I'm talking about when you look at what I did last night and this morning on the internet. So getting relatively unfiltered search results for questions that we may have, which are quite topical, is truly a challenge on the internet even as well. It was a shocker to me to find out in 2016 that, search engines were being, or at least the allegations were being made that they were, sort of shifting results and manipulating data. So this is just an example that I wanted to show you. We all live in order for us to maintain, in my view, an open and free society, we need access to open and free data and ideas from which to draw our own conclusions. And the COVID situation, to me, is providing some frightening examples of the filtering and censorship of critical information by corporate media. I tested Google and a new, for me anyway, a new search engine called DuckDuckGo. I've used actually a Firefox for quite some time, and it found it to be a bit more objective in its search results, but I'm noticing that it seems to be tilted a little bit as well now. So I just took two questions that might be of current interest on the COVID situation and did search results on those two questions. And I'll show you what I got just to show you that there can be quite a bit of difference in the results you get from Google or what I'll call as an alternative at this point, because it's not well known, search engine like DuckDuckGo. So I tried two. Does Dr. Fauci have a financial interest in remdesivir? And how has the COVID-19 virus actually been isolated in the laboratory? So there are a million questions we could have tried, but I just picked those two out for fun. So on the first question, does Dr. Fauci have a financial interest in remdesivir? And, I don't know if you don't know, but I mean, this is the drug that he's been fairly heavily promoting as a potential solution to COVID-19. And he's been fairly negative about other drugs such as hydroxychloroquine. So, I think it's a legitimate question to find out, does he, why would he be promoting one versus the other? Does he have some reason to do that? So when we go on Google, we can at least check the headlines here. We see fact check, Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates won't profit from remdesivir on Google. And then another fact check source, does Anthony Fauci have millions invested in remdesivir? Good question. A tale of two drugs. Here's another solution, money versus medical wisdom. And that one tends to get into the idea of remdesivir being on patent and hydroxychloroquine being off patent. And then Fauci didn't invent and won't profit from remdesivir. So those are the four top results you get from Google. But then when we go to DuckDuckGo, we get kind of different results, not totally, but the top one is Dr. Fauci has a major conflict of interest, is the first thing up on DuckDuckGo. And then we get a repeat, does Dr. Fauci have a conflict of interest? Fact check, does Fauci have millions invested? Those were two that were on Google as well. As the fourth one is as well, Fauci, Bill Gates won't profit. And then at the bottom, though, we get what the public didn't hear about the NIH, let me pulling this aside, remdesivir trials. So you see on DuckDuckGo, you've got two or three what I'll call mainstream that were mentioned on Google, but then there's two that are kind of a conflicting viewpoint. So I'm interested in checking every fact, everything, because I know how much disinformation there is out there. So I just wanted to show you in this case, DuckDuckGo at least is giving you access and knowledge of sources of information that might be contrary to the mainstream narrative. And similarly, I did the same kind of testing on the question, has COVID-19 been isolated in the laboratory? There are those who say that it has been and others that say that it hasn't. So I just wanted to check. And on Google, you get, SARS-CoV-2 viral culturing at CDC, coronavirus, scientists isolate virus responsible, identification of coronavirus isolated from a patient in Korea, how our team isolated the new coronavirus studies isolate virus. So it looks like, that's pretty unanimous. You go over to DuckDuckGo, scientists isolate virus, But here's an interesting result, which is something that I have not seen before in my searches on this topic. The COVID-19 virus may have been in humans for years. So it starts to question what is COVID-19, and probably gets into the fact that it's just another form of coronavirus. And that changes the narrative in the search quite a bit. Teams that have successfully isolated the Italian strain of COVID-19, indicating that there is, in fact, this could be a mutation of the coronavirus. That kind of information is not showing up on Google. So I'm just trying to point out that depending on where you search, you're going to get different results. And having been with a number of different family units over the weekend, it was definitely obvious to me that I could tell pretty quickly those who listened to cable news for their information, those who used Google for their search news, and those who might use other independent sources. So, for those of us, and I would assume if you're listening to this show that you're open-minded, if you haven't tried some of the alternates like DuckDuckGo, give them a try and see what you can find out. So
yeah, Charlie, I heard about DuckDuckGo a few years ago from a man who actually worked for Google, and he recommended DuckDuckGo because it's a proxy search engine. And he said, when you Google something, your limit, even though it says www in front of it, World Wide Web, that is only limited, Google, Bing, they're only limited to the information the United States wants you to know about. You need to utilize a proxy search engine like DuckDuckGo to open up the entire World Wide Web of information. So that's why when you use this DuckDuckGo search engine, you're getting more information because you're opening up a lot more information just by using it, Plus the Google bots can't track you, so you're not going to get stupid commercials and ads and, spam mail sent to you and stuff all the time as well.
Right. So I don't get anything for making that presentation, but I'm just hoping to try to clarify, Lisa and I both, that even something as fundamental as pyramids.ru, which is the Russian pyramid website, you're not going to find it if you go on Google or Bing. I didn't try it on DuckDuckGo, and I probably should have, but I know as well that when I go on Google and do searches on some of the American torsion physics pioneers from the 20th century, you can't find information in English, but you can find it, or on Wikipedia for that matter. So there's definitely, but if you go into Wikipedia in Polish, you'll find the information. So there's obviously censorship going on. So we'll just leave it at that. I want to get into this. As for those of you who saw last week's show, we did the first comprehensive testing on the Caduceus coil last week. And so the first thing we're going to talk about today is a summary of that research and how it's leading me in some new directions. But the one thing I did want to point out before I get started, before I forget, a couple of people have asked me over the last week, where's Lori, and is Lori going to be back? Lori has decided to cease her participation in the show. I'm not totally sure exactly all of the issues, but I know that there's some other issues in her life, and so she has decided to pull back. And so Lisa and I are going to be doing the show by ourselves for the foreseeable future. But along those lines, we wish Lori well, and please know that there's no hard feelings on anyone's part. It's just a decision that she needed to make. So with that said, we also now have an opening on our board for the Pyramid Science Foundation. So if there are any of you who are interested in possibly joining us on the board, please feel free to contact Lisa or me. So let's get started. Last week we looked at 3 different coils. We looked at a wooden coil that had 9 loops. We had a two PVC coils with 36 loops. One had sand and one had no sand. And what Lisa did last week was to douse for the energy fields on a subjective 1 to 10 scale, using our testing for both clarity and energy inside and outside of the pyramid. So what I tried to do over the week was to summarize this data, and it's on the page in front of us. As you can see, when you look to clarity and energy, the wooden coil was not quite as good as either of the PVC coils. We have not tested it because there's so many other variables like the length of the pipe, the number of coils, the fact that the PVC pipe is hollow. Does that have an impact? You can see there are a lot of variables, but we did notice consistently that both the clarity and the power of the wooden coil was not quite that, did not match that of the PVC coils. Now the sand, as you can see as well, enhances both the energy and the clarity of the energy field versus the coil with no sand. And in fact, as Lisa was testing last week, even though we were using a 1 to 10 scale, she found that the coil with the sand was continuing to amp up, and she ended up calling them 10 pluses because we didn't have any more time to continue to test. So the sand does seem to have a positive impact on the energy field. But as you'll notice as well, and I think this is going to lead us into some topics over the next few weeks, not only did it amplify the energy, but it also increased the clarity of the energy field as well. And there's been some work that I had read about last year in Marshall Lefferts' book, Cosmometry, exploring the holofractal nature of the cosmos. And I'd always been meaning to read the book. And so over the weekend, I started reading it. I haven't finished it, but there is just some absolutely amazing information that I'll begin to talk about that will begin to explain some of this in the coming weeks. In terms of the position inside of the pyramid, the best location seems to be vertical and suspended from the top of the pyramid with the end wires facing down. The amplifier does have a significant impact on the energy produced by the total package of the pyramid and the coil and the frequencies, and increase the energy that Lisa was able to measure anywhere from 3 to 7 times that available with the cell phone alone. And then we finally began some frequency testing, and this is going to be a topic that Lisa is going to be undertaking now going forward, doing some comprehensive evaluations of clients. If you want to have some testing done or would like an introduction to solfeggio frequencies and have Lisa assist you with learning which of these frequencies may be most beneficial, we'll get in touch with her. And so I'm going to stop now and, in fact, let Lisa talk about that a little bit and see how we can set something up, because what we want to do ultimately is to be able to start to compile information, from a large number of people, so that we can have some, statistically significant information. But Lisa's, an intuitive and a healer, and she can begin to sense these things as she works with you in session. So I'll kind of stop there, Lisa, and you may want to talk about doing sessions with the coil going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we were just throwing around the past few days here, but it's definitely something I'm interested in doing. I want to help everybody get the appropriate frequency, at least to help them get started. As you know, Charlie and I were testing last week, we noticed, you know, one frequency that we tested, it rated really high for him. And then we tested it again and it was low because he had already gotten that explosive energy. That's all that he needed was that short little burst of energy. So it's going to constantly be changing the different frequency that you're going to utilize to help balance your system, help energize you. So that's what I'm going to help with. Intuitively, I'll be able to tune in. You know, if I do an intuitive design for you, I'll be able to tune in and see which frequency would be ideal for you to utilize with your coils. I'm going to be offering the Caduceus coils, different options, but also different standard options, I should say, but also the intuitive design. So you would send me your picture, just like I do the capstones, and I would design a Caduceus coil according to what you need at that time for healing. So it'd be different crystals, different colors, different frequencies and stuff like that as well.
Okay, so if people are interested in that, Lisa, they can contact you now on your Etsy page, right?
Yeah, just send me a message. I don't have that service up there yet. I just made my first Caduceus coil today. So I'll get that up today.
I'm pushing you a little
Yeah.
bit.
My hand might be sore for the next week because of it. So I might not be able to make one for another week or two. No, just kidding. But yeah, it is. It'll be up on my website, on my Etsy page today. And the service will be offered on there as well. And like Charlie was saying, you know, different frequencies are going to work differently for different individuals, you know, because, you know, science tells us when one frequency is a certain, when you have one frequency and another one that's a little lower and they come into contact, they have to balance each other out. So you're utilizing different frequencies to raise your energy level. That's how crystals work. That's how energy healing works. So if you're, you know, there's many different people at different levels in this world right now. So it just depends on, you need somebody that's going to help you choose a frequency that's going to help you. If that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So anyway, this is, we're going to move on from the summary, but suffice it to say, you know, this testing has demonstrated to me that we really are onto something here, combining the coil, the frequencies, and the pyramids together. So using them together it seems to really you know, have a synergistic impact on the whole process. So I wanted to go on, you know, as I mentioned before, to go back to this page, both the energy, the energy field, the size of the energy field, and the clarity of the field tested at a 10 plus when we put the sand into the pyramid. And we're going to be doing more testing with Lisa as she begins to develop different alternatives to just the quartz sand that I'm putting in to the Caduceus coils right now. But that got me, as I mentioned earlier, started on remembering some information that I had read from this author, Richard Merrick. I had seen it in my favorite book from 2020, which was Cosmometry, Exploring the Holofractal Nature of the Cosmos. And in that book, the author, Marshall Lefferts, has a chapter or two that are based upon the information available in this book by Richard Merrick. And it's called, the book is called Interference, A Grand Scientific Musical Theory. And I don't want to spend too much time on this right now, but I'm going to be doing a lot of, I'm going to be doing either a full or at least a half episode here on the show in the next couple of weeks on some of the important topics that we find here. But I'll just leave you with this thought that there is science that I'll be demonstrating in the next couple of weeks that comes from Merrick's book that explains on a scientific basis why it is that a pyramid with this geometry will both amplify and clarify the energy fields inside of it. So we'll leave it at that. You can get this for free on Richard's website. His website is interferencetheory.com. He has several books that are available there for free for download. And if for any of you who are interested in the science behind this, it is just absolutely mind-blowing. So I'll leave it at that. I had a chance to read about the first 40% of the book over the weekend in downtime. And so I'm not finished, but I can tell you I've already found some huge answers to or explanations as to why the pyramid is doing what it does. So this will be fascinating reading for anyone who wants to take it on. All right, on to making your Caduceus coil. These are three of the coils that I've recently made. We make them currently in black, white, and clear. The clear one on the bottom, as you can see, I fill that up with, they're all filled with sand, but you can see the quartz sand inside the clear finished Caduceus coil on the bottom. So what we're going to be doing, I'm going to be using the clear version. Not only is it beautiful, and Lisa, you might want to hold up your example as well to show people what it looks like, but when the sand is, or the objects are filled in there, it's really a beautiful thing to see. But why don't you show them, I'll stop sharing here so they can see this a little bit better.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can really see mine or not.
You can,
now,
we
I
can see it
didn't,
pretty well. Yeah.
okay, yeah, good. So this is the Caduceus coil that I made. I actually have inside of it bionized quartz sand mixed with magnetite powder and copper filings. So it's going to be really powerful inside and more conductive. And I made sure that I hit those wires at each end with that as well. So I plugged it in just for a little bit before we started the show and tested it. And it's a powerful little baby. So I'm eager to keep using it and see how, and do some testing with it later on too.
Sure. But anyway, we wanted to go through today and show you step by step what you'd need to do to make your own if you are so inclined. I'm going to tell you that, as you'll see as we go through, I always love to share this information because I want particularly people who love to do things themselves the opportunity to do it yourself. I think you will find, unfortunately in this case, not only is this this one requires a fair amount of skill and dexterity. You're probably going to get a lot better doing these after you've done several. But the other thing is that a lot of the parts are going to be a little bit more expensive to purchase, in onesies and twosies than I can buy or Lisa can buy in bulk. So by the time you see the time it may take, you may decide you don't want to do this, and that's fine. But I've gone out and I've given you the least expensive options that I can find on the internet for all of the various parts and components. But here's a list basically of what you're going to need for the coil. You're going to need a 2-foot section of 3/4 inch PVC pipe. You're going to need somewhere between 18 to 24 gauge bare copper wire. We're using 20. And you're going to need about 27 feet of that for a 36 loop coil that we're making today. You're also going to need either 2 number 8 corks or 2 number 3 tapered rubber stoppers. Now that's to make a simplistic one. Lisa can talk when we get to that section as to how she is doing this with alternatives such as resin. But if you want to just make this, in simplistic fashion, either the corks or the rubber stoppers will work. In terms of the connectors, you're going to need 2 2-inch alligator clamps. I would suggest that you get 3 or 4 because you're going to find that you may bend these the wrong way and you have to, do this a second time. But you'll need 2 at a minimum. You're going to need 4 to 6 feet of 16 to 20 gauge speaker wire for a connector that you'll need to make between, if you're going to use an amplifier, between the amplifier and the coil. And you're also going to need a pair of either a pair of earphones or what's called a 3.5 millimeter male connector with about 4 feet of wire to make the connector between the cell phone and laptop, if you decide to use it that way. And then finally, if you are going to be using an amplifier, you'll need to get one somewhere between 20 to 100 watts. And we'll talk about all of that. So, tools and accessories that you need to make the coil. You're going to need some kind of a saw. I have a saw, on a platform, a circular saw that I use for cutting my PVC pipe for the pyramid. So this is easy, but you could also use just a simple, small handheld pipe to cut with. You'll need a drill of some sort for placing the holes in the pipe. You could use just your everyday drill. At home, I happen to have a professional drill press that I use to do this, and Lisa's got some ideas as to assist those of you who will be using just a regular drill. You need some scissors. Wire stripping tool is very helpful when you're stripping the edges of the wire, but if you don't have one, you can always do it with the edge of a knife. Need some sort of a Sharpie or Marks-a-Lot or equivalent, and a rubber hammer. So that's the list. I would also suggest that you come back to this. We're going to obviously post this starting today. All of our videos are going to be on the Pyramid Science Foundation website. So come back and watch the video afterward, and you can start it and stop it as you need to work through this. So step one, pick your coil material. Do you want PVC versus wood? My personal preference, given it seems like the energy works better, is to use PVC. It might be a little less expensive to go with a dowel, so you have to take that into consideration. But PVC seems to be a better transmitter of magnetic scalar waves, producing greater energy and less diffusion. PVC also allows you to place enhancers of various types inside the tube. However, either a wooden dowel or a PVC pipe can be drilled through to hold the wire in place, and wood is less expensive. But what we'd recommend is, if you're going to be using PVC pipe, there's 2 ways to do it. If you are happy with plumbing grade pipe, just go to Home Depot or Lowe's. They sell 3/4 inch PVC pipe in 2-foot lengths, and it'll cost you less than $2 to get a piece of pipe. If you want a furniture grade piece of pipe, like the black, white, or clear that we showed earlier, you can get that from a number of sources. Amazon.com does sell the very same pipe that I use for retail sale, as does a company called formufit.com. Furniture grade is going to be more expensive, but it's a whole lot prettier. It doesn't have printing and ink on it and so forth. So, you have to make your decision there. But if you do buy a 5-foot piece of pipe, the good news is, if you want to make multiple coils, maybe for friends or have several around the house, you can make 3 coils with a 5-foot section of pipe. So that's the good news. Now here's an example of a 2-foot piece of 3/4 inch PVC you can get at Home Depot, $1.60, so relatively inexpensive. You can go to formufit.com or amazon.com. This is Formufit's Amazon website. You can get a 5-foot Schedule 40 clear pipe for $17.53. And that includes free delivery, so that's really not too bad. You can also get white and black there as well. And I didn't check, but I don't think you get free delivery on FormuFit. So for those with Prime, you're probably best off going ahead and getting this on Amazon. So in terms of the stoppers or corks you'll need, you can use either number 3 stoppers or number 8 corks. Again, you only need 2 of them. So this is another example where, you know, you're going to get charged a bit more than you'd like, but the number 8 tapered corks are $1.22 each. So you'll need 2 of those from Amazon. You could also get stoppers in a package of 5 for $8.50. So the advantage to the stoppers is that when you're using the clear pipe, this particular shade of stopper will match the color of the aqua quartz sand almost perfectly. And it's almost, I won't say it's impossible, but it's challenging to see any distinction between the sand and visually and the cork and the stopper. The downside to using a stopper is that it's a little more challenging, as you'll see here in a minute. We're going to have to punch that down into the pipe a little bit, so it's a little bit harder to get into the pipe for this application because you have to pound it in beyond the edge of the pipe itself. But that's a decision you'll start to see here in a minute as to why that's relevant. So step 2, once you have your piece of pipe, is to cut the pipe to 19¼ inches. That's the length that you're going to want for your piece of pipe. And what I've done here, I've taken a photo and I've put a little black mark there at the 19¼ inch position. And I went ahead and cut that, with my drill, or excuse me, my saw. And down below, all I did, and this is rule number 1 when you're cutting anything, is double check your work. So go back once you've cut it and make sure that when you measure it, that you've got it exactly 19¼ inches, because the way we set this up for putting the cross marks on the pipe, you're going to want to make sure that you've got exactly the right length for the pipe. So once you've got a piece of pipe at 19¼ inches, then we're going to start marking the pipe to drill the holes on each end. So what the next step is to place a mark 1/2 inch from each end of the pipe. So you can see on the right side, I have it, the edge is at 19¼ inches. I put my mark at 18¾ which is 1/2 inch from the right side. And conversely, on the left end, I put the mark 1/2 inch from the edge. So that's the first thing you're going to want to do. Lisa came up with a great idea, so I will let her talk about this. I was doing all these photos by myself, so it's hard to tell here, but I was able to keep the ruler taut with my right hand while I was marking the pipe, and so I got it fairly straight and level, relative, so that the marks are at the same height. But Lisa, I'm going to let her talk about how she did this, so that you can get maybe a little bit more effective way on how to make these pipe holes. So go ahead and talk about that, Lisa.
Now this only works if you're using the internal coupler, or I'm sorry, the clear pipe. Yes. Yeah. So I actually have one of the internal couplers that Charlie used to use for holding the benetation pyramid together. It actually isn't perfectly round. There's actually 4 little, if you can see here, there's 4 little divots, right? Northeast, south, and west. So what I did was I measured 1/2 inch from the lip here and put a straight line right in that little groove, and then measured 1/2 inch from the lip and put a line this way. So that's the cross point where you're going to put your drill bit, where you're going to mark that dot to drill the hole. And then right on the other side is the same exact thing. So it's going to make sure that you get that hole evenly spaced from the other side. So you just pop this in to the clear pipe and put your dot right on the X, and you're ready to drill. Yeah. It's pretty easy.
You can get those elsewhere. You don't even have to use a clear internal coupler. You could use any sort of a dowel or anything like that that would fit inside. But the idea here is that you want to make sure that when you drill down through the pipe, that you're drilling straight through. So another way to do this might be to take a straight edge and draw a line on the edge of the pipe so that you can sort of eyeball and make sure that your marks on the outside are 180 degrees apart from each other. But anyway, so once you've marked your pipe, the next step is to actually drill the holes through both ends of the pipe. Now here I'm using my drill press, and so it's fairly straightforward for me because I know that I'm going to get a perfectly vertical drill hole because of my drill press. But if you're using a traditional drill, you're going to have a tendency to go off mark. So try to use some of the ideas and techniques that Lisa used here to make sure that the holes come through evenly. Now, in terms of the drill bit size, I use the drill bit that you see there and that I've used is a 3/16 inch bit, but I think a 1/4 inch bit would work as well. Lisa asked me this morning how big it was, and then she realized that I had it down here, but you'll just have to, if your drill bit set should have markings at the bottom of each bit as to what size they are. So try to pick a 3/16 to a 1/4 inch bit to do this.
And it's very important because I wasn't taking into consideration that the wire has to go through the hole up to 3 times back and forth. I was thinking it only went through once until I got all the way wrapped. And then I had to actually drill next to the wire that I already had through it because I didn't want to unwrap it. So, which was a pain because it broke my wire later on down the road. So yeah, make sure the hole is big.
That's right. And there's no, the way I've devised the instructions, it really doesn't matter if the hole's a little too large because there's really no harm in having a larger hole. So you're better to drill a little bit larger hole than smaller hole, as Lisa's learned from experience. So. So anyway, moving on, this is going to sound complex. It's not, but it is really important. Lisa, I tried to explain to Lisa my state of the art a week ago without these instructions. And it just became very obvious that we had to have some sort of a methodology to figure out how to name and mark the various sides, front and back, of the coil. So there's no magic in this. You might come up with a better solution. This is a solution that works. So just, if you're one that likes to improve and tinker, you might find some better way, but this works. So get 2 pieces of tape. I actually use what I used to, quite honestly, I have priority mail labels, and I just cut a little piece of that out because it has white on the back and it has glue. So it worked pretty well, but use any sort of white tape or anything like that. It will work on this. But get 2 pieces of tape, and on the front and the back of one piece, write FR for front right, and on the front and back of the other one, write RR for rear right. And none of that makes sense yet, but just do it and we'll explain it as we move on. Place the FR, or front right label, on the right side of the pipe next to the drilled hole as shown in figure 1 on the next page. So I'm going to scoot over to the next page here. On the top right-hand corner, this is figure 1. you'll see on the right side of the pipe, have one of the holes facing forward, put that FR label right there next to that hole. That's all you have to do for now. Next step, without moving the pipe, place the RR label on the rear, on the left side of the pipe, next to the drilled hole as shown in figure 2. So we put the FR on the front on the right, and now we're going to put the other one, the RR, on the back side without moving the pipe across from the back hole. And that's now to double check your work. All you do is, once you've done that, pick up the pipe. I don't know if you guys can see, you probably can't see me, but flip it over 180 degrees, and the RR tape should now be on the front of the pipe on the right, as shown in figure 3. It was in the back left before, now it's on the front right, and the FR will be in the back left instead of the front right as it was before. So not hard, but you'll see why it's important to have a way of defining each side, front or back. And so we've now done that. The next step is to begin to make what are called the cross marks on the pipe. And we're going to start on the front side. The front side and the back side will be done exactly the same way. So if you learn how to do the front, you'll do the back just fine. So we're going to start by placing the pipe as shown with the FR in front of us on the table on the right side of the front of the pipe. So starting from that side and going left, we're going to start with a Sharpie or some equivalent, marks a lot or whatever. Place the first mark 3/4 of an inch from the end of the pipe. Now you remember that we drill the hole at a 1/2 inch. So there's only going to be 1/4 of an inch of space between the middle of that hole and the first cross mark that we're going to put on the pipe. And after we put that first one at the 3/4 inch mark, we're going to continue to mark at 1/2 inch intervals across the pipe. So after 3/4, we'll have 1 1/4, 1 3/4, 2 1/4, 2 3/4, and so forth. And we keep doing that all the way across the pipe until we get to the other end. And at the other end of the pipe, the last dot that you're going to put on is going to be at the 18 1/4 inch mark, which is again 1/2 of an inch to the right of the hole on the left side. Remember again, the pipe is 19 1/4 inches. The hole is 1/2 inch in at 18 3/4, and we're going to make our last mark at 18 1/4 inches. So I've just kind of done a left side, middle side, and right side here, so you can see your last mark over here on the left side is at 18 1/4 inches, goes every 1/2 an inch all the way back to the 3/4 inch mark on the right side. So that is the markings for the front side of the pipe. Now we're going to do the exact same thing by turning the pipe over and having the RR label on the front of the pipe on the right side, and we're going to follow the exact same process that we used before. We'll start marking from the right, moving left, with the first mark at 3/4 of an inch, 1 1/4, 1 3/4, and so forth, up to 18 1/4 inches on the other side. So once that's done, one of the beauties actually of making your own with a clear pipe is you can, even if you don't do it with a clear pipe, hopefully this will give you some ideas to what's actually happened. So I want to read to you what I've got written down here and hopefully it'll make sense. No matter whether you look at the front or the back side of the pipe, you're going to notice that the distance between the right hole and the adjacent crossmark is 1/4 of an inch, and the distance between the left hole and the adjacent crossmark is 1/2 an inch. And this is intentional, and it results in a spacing of 1/4 of an inch between the top and bottom crossmarks. So if you look at this piece of pipe that I've blown up here in the picture, you see 2 dots, one on the right and the left. Well, those are actually on the top of the pipe, and the one in the center is on the bottom of the pipe. So they're not going to be directly underneath each other. They're going to be staggered, just like the wires that you've seen in the pictures before. So this is all intentional, and that's the way it's supposed to work out. And if you do this exactly as we've told you, you're going to end up with a coil that has exactly 36 cross marks on each side and 36 total coils, or loops rather, on the coil. So the next step is going to be putting sand into, if you're going to put sand. Otherwise you can put, Lisa, if you start talking to Lisa, she'll put crystals or all other types of enhancements in. But if you're going to use sand, there's 3 options for getting sand. You can get some bionized sand from Lisa. Lisa, you might want to talk about how people can order that from you.
Yeah, I offer bulk orders of bionized sand on my Etsy shop. So just follow, if you want to, just go to Charlie's store, and there's a link to my Etsy shop on that. So you can order different sizes, and I'll have smaller batches actually if you want to get it for your Caduceus coil as well.
Okay.
But if you do order the aqua quartz sand that Charlie's going to mention and do it yourself, I recommend saving some money and going right to one of your local swimming pool stores. They usually carry it there for about half the price of what you can buy it online.
Yeah. I will also say that in some parts of the country, it's more easily accessible in the plumbing supply stores than others. I can't find it in Harrisburg, and you live in Western Pennsylvania. I think the mine is in Ohio. So you'll have to just check.
Okay.
But you can also order the sand from Amazon. I've got 2 options here. You can get 2 pounds. This is another classic example of the problem of ordering in bulk versus getting small amounts. But 2 pounds of sand is $11.25 on Amazon. A 50-pound bag is $28. So you can see that you can keep your costs down quite a bit if you're making these in bulk. But the last thing you can do as well, I guess, is use your own sand or clean high crystal quartz sand. So those are decisions you'll need to make before you begin. But I wanted to show you how to add quartz sand into the pipe, into your coil. Now here I've used a number 8 cork, not a stopper, but what you're going to want to do is to hammer in one of the corks or stoppers into one end of the pipe as shown, with either an awl, if you know what that is. That's sort of like something you can use to hammer nails in past the wood or something. Or I've just used a dowel that fits inside, like a 1/2-inch dowel could be used to do this as well. So what you want to do is to get that cork down below, just below the hole that you've drilled for your wires. And that way you don't have, when I originally designed this, I didn't do this, and I had the cork in the middle of the hole, and depending on how big a hole you drilled, it started leaking sand, and it was just a mess. So you want to get that stopper or cork down below your hole. So once you've done that, then you're probably, you can see my setup here in the shop. I have a 5-gallon bucket that I put my sand into, and I have a funnel, and I pour that into the pipe as shown. But this is important, folks, because you can't just pour it in and stop it up because the sand will settle. So what you're going to want to do, and you want it to settle as tightly as possible. So what you're going to want to do is hold the sand as I'm showing in the photo. Put your thumb on the top of the edge of the pipe, and then hold the pipe and firmly tap it down about 50 times. And you'll be amazed at how much that sand is going to settle in to the pipe. And then you're going to have to fill some more and tap again until essentially you fill the hole or the sand up, and it's tamped down to about the location of the second dot below the hole. And that'll give you enough room to tamp down, just like we did before, the cork, and beat it in, and further tighten the sand together, and have the cork rest just below the hole in the pipe. So that's the way you fill the sand. Next thing we're going to need we're going to need wire, and we're about ready to start. I've just picked out a small example of wire. This is the least expensive that I could find on Amazon that had sufficient amounts of wire. You're going to need about a 27-foot length of wire. I buy this just by way, and this is 15 yards, which is 45 feet. So you'll have about 18 feet of spare here. So you can't even make two with this. But if you're just interested in making one, you can get the wire for $5. On the other hand, I buy it in 750 foot amounts, and I get it for about $20. So you can see you're really paying up for getting small amounts here, but this is the smallest amount. Whatever you decide to do, though, make sure that it's 20 gauge, and we're using bare copper wire. A quick discussion on that. You're going to find that bare copper wire, particularly in these types of gauges, are generally going to come from craft, for craft and jewelry applications. And what we're going to tell you to do later in the show, there may be a fine coating on there to keep it from tarnishing. And we're going to want to take the edges at the end, and you'll see this later, and sand off that fine coating. But anyway, this is the kind of wire that you're going to need to do this. Now, finally, to wiring the coil. This is the guts of the process. This first step, what you're going to want to do is to begin by bending about 6 to 8 inches of wire from the back hole, with having this R. I started with RR. You could start with FR, but just to be consistent, why don't you follow my directions and use RR to start with? And you're going to want to bring about 6 to 8 inches of wire through the back hole, the hole behind the RR piece of tape, and bring it forward through the front hole, and kind of bend it off to the side. It doesn't matter how, but just sort of bend it, because we're going to start to coil with that. And once you bend it at an angle away from that hole, it'll help to hold the wire in place as we begin to coil it around the pipe. So that's step one. Now step B, 6B, start turning the coil clockwise, or excuse me, let's see. You're going to be coiling the wire clockwise, which turns out you do that by turning the coil itself counterclockwise. But you're going to want to have 3 total revolutions of wire, as you see here, as you're to begin with. Now, at the beginning of the 4th loop, which would be here, you see we had the wire go through here. It's gone through 3 full times, and at the beginning of the 4th loop, You can't really see it yet, but I'm going to start bending the wire slowly to the left. And you do that such that when you begin that process, which is going to be on the back of the RR piece of tape, when you get around 180 degrees to where the RR is showing on the front, this is the dot, which is only a quarter of an inch away from the hole. So you're going to want to turn, that first half turn. This is the first one that you're going to need to match up. You're going to want to make that wire cross directly over that cross mark dot that you see there and have the wire rest directly over that cross mark. And now we're going to go 180 degrees further around, and now you'll see that the RR piece of RR tape is on the bottom, and we're now on the other side of the coil, and now we're a full ½ inch away from the other wires. And we continue this process, wrapping the wire, turning it a half a turn, and making sure that the wire is directly over the associated dot. We continue that process all the way down the coil to the end of the to the left end of the coil. And remember again, that is 18. That's the 18¼ inch mark. That's the last one you made, or 18½ rather, and that's a quarter. Excuse me. Yeah, sorry, I said it wrong. That is a quarter of an inch away from the FR side. So at that point, you're going to want to put your left thumb, as you'll see in the next picture, you're going to want to hold that wire in place. And this is where dexterity and practice really starts to come in. And I'm sure Lisa will confirm this, because you're going to have to do a lot of different things at one time. But holding that piece of wire in place, you're going to want to take the other end of the wire, and we're going to start to thread this like a piece of thread back through these holes. I want to make a really important point here before we start. I said earlier on that you needed to cut a 27-foot piece of wire, and that the reason why you can't just leave it on a long piece of coil is because you're going to have to take the opposite end that isn't wound up yet and put that in through here. So you're going to have an actual 27-foot piece of coil for this to work. If you try this, you're going to find out, you're going to say, oh God, I got to cut the wire now because I forgot to do that. And all the work that you've done up until now is going to go for naught, because you're going to have to take your left hand off, and all of that nice spacing that you did up until now is going to be ruined. You're going to have to do it over again. So remember to cut that 27-foot length before you start. So that's just a warning, word to the wise. But holding your left thumb over the wire in place there, you're going to take that other end of the coil or wire, and you're going to thread it through the back end and back through the front end. So what you're seeing here, immediately above my thumb, this is the other end of the coil wire coming through the back side of the pipe through the back hole. Now here's the next picture. You're going to see that we pulled the wire completely through, and we've now tightened it very tightly, and we've made sure it's coming through now on the FR side of the tape, and you'll see that I was able to retain pretty much the wire going along the cross marks that we had delineated before. So if you need to take a break at this point, and sometimes you might, this is a good spot to do it, because you may need to go to the bathroom or answer a phone call or do something. But if you've pulled it tightly and you've kind of pushed that wire over and it's taut, you can take a quick break and take a breather. So anyway, so we're halfway home, so to speak, almost now. But what we're going to do next, we're going to do 3 complete loops around the pipe at this end, just as we had done at the bottom. And just before reaching the third loop, once you've done the third loop, you're going to hold the wire in place, as I'm doing once again, with your left hand. And again, you're going to hold it right next to the FR tape that you put on the wire. Now, you're going to thread the end of the wire through the hole marked FR and have it come out the other side. So I've done that now. You can see I've pushed the wire through the FR hole, and if you can see on the other side on the bottom, you can see a little piece of wire sticking out. That's what I've threaded through, and in the next photo, you're going to see that I pull that through completely. And so now it's tight. Complete pulling the wire tightly through the hole behind the FR tape symbol, and now you're ready to begin the return path back down the pipe. Now, we're starting this, if you can visualize this, this photo still shows it as the FR. But you're gonna start your turn on the other side of the pipe. You're going to be going in the opposite direction of the coil or the turns of the pipe coming up. So 1/2 turn from the backside, you're going to be back to the last cross mark that we crossed on the up, coming up the pipe. And you're going to want to cross, that hole, which again is 1/4 of an inch from the hole next to the FR piece of tape. So go 1/2 turn, and you'll encounter the first 1/4 inch cross mark. And make sure that the wire you're crossing is properly positioned as well, the one underneath it. This is where dexterity and practice starts to come into play, because you're going to want to try to keep tension on the wire at the same time that you're positioning what's now the wire underneath, if it's not on the mark, before you kind of force it to stay in place with the wire on top that you're holding in your left hand. So you're going to continue this same process just like we did before and proceed back down the coil, trying to make sure that the wire you're going over, as well as the wire that you're now placing atop that wire, are both hitting the cross marks. And see the partially, I should say, finished coil above. So, here's a picture of what it looks like part of the way through the return process. So when you get to the very last cross mark, and again, that's going to be at the RR tape on that side, 1/4 of an inch from the hole. Once again, you're going to want to hold the wire at that point with your left hand and hold the wire in place. So this, you'll start to see, this is, kind of getting the same. We're doing the same thing again with holding that wire in place. You're going to take the other end of the wire, thread it through on the back side, and run it through the front side where the RR tape sticker is located. And just as we did before, you're going to pull that through and pull it tight. So here we are back. We pulled that through. We've made it nice and tight. And we finished threading the wire through the hole marked RR and pulled tightly. Once again, we're going to wrap the wire around 3 more times. And then we're going to thread the wire through the hole marked RR and out through the hole behind it. What you're going to end up with, as a result, pull the wire through tightly. You're now going to have two pieces of wire on coming out, one coming out of each hole at the end of the pipe, as shown on the right. So now at the top, you will have had 6 total turns of copper wire, and you have the 2 ends of the wire coming out towards the end. Now, the 27 feet is a bit longer than you need, but if you try to make it shorter, you're going to regret it. If you try to make it 26 feet, for one thing, if you don't have enough wire, you're going to be really miffed for trying to save, whatever money you have for a foot's worth of waste on the pipe, on the wire. But you're going to want to take some wire cutters, and you'll want to cut those 2 ends. You see one of them continues on. That's the piece we just pulled through. And you'll want to cut them approximate together about the same distance, about 4 inches from the end of the pipe. And now, I mentioned earlier that a lot of this finer gauge wire that you'll find on Amazon or eBay, doesn't matter, or even Etsy perhaps, that you might use may have a coating on it. You're going to want to take, like I have here, either a rubbing block or you could have steel wool, any sort of abrasive, and you're going to want to sand off the edges of the wire to make sure that if any of that coating is still there, that you get a good, that you get that off, so that you'll, when you go to use your alligator clamp, you'll have a good solid connection with your wires. Now, don't be disappointed if this is the way your coil looks after you've done all of this, because I've been doing this. I've made probably 25 of these now. So, and this is the way mine looked when I made mine, and it was all said and done. So don't be disappointed if that's the way it looks, because there's a number of different ways, and Lisa even has a way she's going to show you in a minute to help with this problem. But if you have been diligent about holding tight on the wires, pulling the wires through the holes tightly, you'll find that once you reposition the wires in place, it's a bit tedious, but they will go back into place and pretty much stay in place after you've done that. So don't be dismayed. So I'm showing here what I do with my fingernail. I just get my fingernail at each one of these positions that's out of place, and I sit there and I push to get the cross to vertically connect at the correct position right on top of the cross mark. And also, if it's going to the left or the right, you'll want to push the wire over accordingly to put it on top of the cross mark. And you're going to want to do this process on both sides of the coil. And you may have to repeat it more than once, but if you're diligent about it, this is the same coil that I showed you in the previous slide that looks so ratty. After a couple of times of resetting the wires, you should be able to get your wires to fit properly over the cross marks as shown above. So, you can't even see those marks at this point. So, all of this stuff is, pretty good shape. But I did it with my fingernail, but Lisa has come up with a different technique as well that you might try, or some variation on this. So you want to show them that, Lisa?
Yes, sure. I don't have the patience to keep fixing something more than one time. So, so I had to come up with this idea. But if you can see, let me hold this up a little closer. Mine aren't completely X'd across. They're kind of jacked up a little bit here. They're kind of twisted because I use these little jewelry pliers. Okay, just little jewelry pliers. And I went right over Let's see if you can see right here. Went over and just put them right between the two wires and squeezed it until it crossed right on that X, or right on that dot. All of these, it's very important that all of these line up right on that dot, or it's not going to work properly. Both sides, you need to make sure. This little trick though, because I actually twisted a little bit as well, it actually tightens it up so they're not moving around either. So I tested the energy of this just before we started the show, and it's working, it's powerful, and I don't think that little bit of a twist is going to harm anything.
Okay. All right. So one other idea that I have not tested in terms of keeping it for the long haul, but you might get some clear, like, I don't know if I'd want to use crazy glue, maybe, but something like that, and just put a few periodic pieces of, or, you know, dots or drops of glue across it, which wouldn't be terribly aesthetically unpleasing, and that might help to hold it as well. So this is still a work in progress. You know, we haven't figured out the perfect ideas. If you come up with better ideas, let us know, and we'll certainly pass them on to people as we proceed. So that's really it for making the coil. I'm going to go through briefly in the last few minutes. We have the accessories that you'll need if you to make the various connectors that you need to connect either to your cell phone or laptop, and also to your amplifier if you decide to use one. So these are alligator clamps. You can get a whole bunch of different kinds on Amazon. I've used, there are two types of clamp. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but you stick your wire into the back of this clamp, and essentially you take pliers and you just bend this to where it makes a very tight connection. There are other ones that have just little triangles that you bend over, but I learned from experience, I bought both. It's worth the extra few cents to get this, because this connection seems to be a lot stronger. So again, unfortunately, it's hard to buy these in small quantities. As you can imagine, you can buy 20 pieces of these for $6. You can buy 100 of them for $14. So you might be able to go to your local hardware store and buy these as well in onesies or twosies. I didn't check. But for those of you who want the convenience these days of buying it on Amazon, here are two examples. Now you're going to have two different connectors that you may want to make in association with the coil. One is, I'm calling a cell phone to coil connector. It's whether it's cell phone, laptop, iPad, it's all going to work the same. One end of the coil of the connector is going to be the alligator clamp, and the other piece is going to be what's called a 3.5 millimeter male audio plug. And so I'm going to give you two options to make this. You can buy a 3.5 millimeter male to male audio cable for about $6.38. If you cut it in half, you can actually make two of these out of one, because what we need on one end is this audio cable. The other alternative, or excuse me, this audio plug. The other option is to just get a pair of earphones. It doesn't have to be this pair. It could be something very inexpensive. I have, as an example, I haven't cut them up, but I just have a pair of regular earphones. I don't know if people can see me or not, but let me see, can you? Yeah, just, you know, just something like this, and you could cut the ends off. So whichever way you decide to do this, you'll have a male plug on one end that'll go into your laptop. The other end, you're going to need to, in the case of earphones, cut off the earphones, and then you're going to need to strip the wire, or you'll need to strip the end of the audio auxiliary cable that you've cut in half. Strip off wire you're going to find inside, you'll have two wires if you use earphones, and in each side of those, or each piece of those two wires, you will find a copper wire that's the main lead, and then you may find some other insulating wiring or other wire. All you want is the copper wire, and you're going to want to get the copper wire from both of those pieces. The remaining wire you can either cut off or disregard or tape up, but you don't need to use that wire. And so one way or the other, you're going to end up either from the stereo with two pieces of copper wire, or from the earphones, or from the cable, you'll find that there's two copper wires inside there. You'll strip those down, basically twist them together, and then clamp them on to the plug. And that way this is the basic connector that you're going to need to make your connector for your cell phone or laptop. The other connection you're going to need is an amplifier to coil connector if you decide to use an amplifier. This is actually a little bit more straightforward. Just take some 16, 18 gauge speaker wire, might cut a 4 to 5 foot piece on it, strip the ends off of one end, then strip the ends on the other, twist the ones on the second end together, and once again, clamp it into an alligator clamp. And finally, if you're going to be connecting to an amplifier, this is the right way to do that. You're going to have two wires, but if you go into the back of your amp, you're going to have both a left and a right speaker outlet, and a plus and a minus for each of those speakers. You want to leave the negative holes blank and put your wire into the positive hole in the back of the amp. The other thing that you'll need if you're going to have an amplifier is an RCA cable. I think I forgot to mention that, but the RCA cable will go directly, that's actually the device you see on the left here. It splits from a single 3.5 millimeter adapter to two parts, and that's if you're using the amplifier, the two-piece part of the cable will end up going into these two holes for audio input. So I think I have that on the list. I didn't show a picture of it, but you can get an RCA cable for about $5 or $6 on Amazon. And you will need that as well if you decide to use an amplifier. So that's basically what you need to know about how to set up and make your own Caduceus coil. So I'm sure there's going to be a number of questions. If you have questions, please feel free to contact us or write comments in this. I will probably do a totally separate video when I've got comments back and put it on as a separate video in the near term after we've worked out a few more kinks. But I wanted to give people who had an interest in doing this on their own the opportunity to start making your own coils and trying this for yourself. So
Charlie, we do have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do have one question on here. Someone's asking, they're saying, I've been using insulated 25 gauge that works. Are you saying uninsulated works better?
I haven't tested uninsulated yet. I have to be honest, all of the instructions that I have seen have used bare wire. That's something that we can test later. I can say in general that the higher the gauge number, which means the thinner the wire, the less energy the coil is going to produce. So we said 18 to 24 initially. I'm using 20 because it's still fairly manageable to work with. the 18 is going to be a bit more powerful, and it'll be more powerful as you go down in gauge, up in size. The thickest wire, copper wire, just for those of you unfamiliar, would be 2 gauge, and that would be about that thick. So the bigger the number, actually, the thinner the wire. So you can try it with the insulated wire. I just haven't had a chance to do that yet.
Charlie,
Yes, Jack.
I made mine with insulated.
Oh, okay. Good. And is that the same one that Lisa tested last week?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then it seems like it doesn't matter. I didn't think it would because, using some of this coated bare copper wire, it doesn't seem to make a difference either. So I think it's probably okay then. But we'll try to test that in the near future.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any? If there aren't any other questions, I think we're about done for today. And again, thank you. We always. Yeah.
Hold on one second, Charlie. I just want to read that that I read to you earlier.
I'm so sorry. We haven't done that.
Want to do that real quick?
Yes,
okay.
This is really important information for everybody in the pyramid community that Lisa received from one of our viewers. And I apologize. I forgot to have Lisa read this earlier.
Oh, that's okay. It'll be a good way to finish the show.
It will be. It will be.
So one of our viewers, actually, who has supported our work for a long time, knew we'd be interested in this information. It's from a 12th dimensional telepath named Grandma Chandra the Savant. Okay. And this was her message on July 3rd of this year. It says, "Hello, soul family. The 7-7 gateway on July 7th, 2020 will activate all Gaia's pyramids that you have been working with, individually and in different separate groups. Now all the work will be done collectively. Humanity's consciousness has risen to the point that you can finally absorb and consume the meanings of these pyramids on Earth. Instead of just being amazed, surprised, and fascinated by them, you can finally start working with them on equal terms, utilizing their energies that were saved and waiting for you. This is like a download that reveals, unfolds, and unwraps all the potential, the messages and the tools that were sacredly saved for you to access now. Each of you will be called to work with a particular pyramid, a group of pyramids, and a group of people. You have already started preparing for this work. After the 7-7 gateway opens, you will work more consciously. This will be reflected in your life on the conscious level. Start watching for or start feeling this vibrational call that will be sent to you. When you get this call, respond to it and look for the work that you are supposed to do, the group of people you are supposed to work with, or the task that you will be assigned to. Ask for clarification during sleep and receive more information in the dream time. You can also ask for clarity in your meditations or call on me to come assist you when you get closer to your goal, task, and mission. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's pretty important to share. It's not just us spreading the knowledge of pyramids. It's a lot of spiritual people picking up on this pyramid energy and how important it is, especially in this time of trauma that the Earth is going through right now. So,
right. Could you repeat the name of the person who did this? I don't know if we have any way or website information or anything.
I didn't have anything pulled up yet, but it's Grandma Chandra, Chandra, the Savant. She's a 12th dimensional telepath. So I'm sure just when you go and search, you'll find some information on her.
Okay. Well, since the 7th is tomorrow, I figure it's timely to go do a little research on this after the show. So, well, thanks, Lisa.
Yes, and thank you to our viewer for sharing that as well.
Yes. So we're about done for today. As always, we thank you for watching Pyramid Quest. Tell your friends. We know this is transition week. We have just begun, as those of you who are on now know, to broadcast our live stream from the Pyramid Science Foundation YouTube page. So that's where you'll be finding us from here on out. I will be making a video to put on the old or on my Stargate Pyramids YouTube page to announce that when people show up and wonder where we were. So hopefully not too much dislocation going forward. But as always, tell your friends about us. And again, support the Pyramid Science Foundation. We are now open and have our 501c3 designation. You can contribute to our work on the pyramidsciencefoundation.org website. And we have lots of fascinating information that we can't wait to start getting research funding for in the near future. So again, we thank you for watching, and you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.